Questions. As I'm sure most of you know, we slightly changed the procedure this year in that we have asked for some submitted questions. We asked for submitted questions and got more than 70 in response, and the organisers have selected 4 questions to kick us off. After that, the floor is open to absolutely anyone. So I'm going to call, first of all, on Peter Thomason-Clark from Surrey Police to pose his point and his question to the Home Secretary. Peter Thomason-Clark.
Home Secretary, the Police Federation has, during the last year, been variously described as poisonous, archaic, Luddite and difficult by the government-supporting press, when all we have tried to do is protect the previously hard-won rights of our membership. Rights which were given in recognition of the difficult and often unique job that police officers do. The Federation doesn't always get things right. We have reflected inwardly and instigated an independent review of our setup and practices in order that we learn the lessons of recent years. Is it not time for you, in turn, to reflect on the good work that the Federation does in supporting its members and their families through some very traumatic and sometimes life-changing events, in order to ensure that the finest police service in the world continues providing the public with the very best service, and publicly show your support for what the Police Federation does?
Your response, I'm saying behind that, I suspect anyway, the suggestion that Steve alluded to, that they feel, members of the Federation feel let down by you.
Well, in response to the question, which was about, do I recognise the good work that the Federation does? Yes, I do recognise the good work that the Federation does. The Federation has a role far beyond that which I see most naturally in the interaction I have with the Federation when we're talking about policy and about the future of policing and those sorts of issues and pay and terms and conditions. And I recognise that day to day the Federation and Federation representatives will be doing work for the members at local level, in addition to what is being done at the national level. As I said in my speech, it's not the case that the Federation and I always agree on everything that we discuss, but what I think is important is that we sit down together, that we talk together, and that we understand each other and the feelings that come from your members, but also obviously set in context what the government is doing.
Peter, do you want to come back on that?
No, I think that's answered it. Thank you very much.
OK, thank you very much, Steve. Let's move on to Natalie Samuel from Thames Valley Police. Where's Natalie? Make yourself known and put your point to the Home Secretary, please, Natalie.
Madam Home Secretary, this government has repeatedly stated that policing is about cutting crime, no more, no less. This has been reiterated by yourself, Mr Damien Green only this week, and recently Mr Tom Windsor. You have recognised that much of police time is taken up with other matters, but I wonder if you really appreciate the complexity of taking those matters away from the remit of the police. For example, last May I was duty sergeant in Slough when a lady reported her husband had not come back from morning prayers. When the gentleman's car was found next to the river, concern escalated. I used my powers under Section 17 of PACE and broke the car window. Inside I found a suicide note. Over the next 7 days, officers searched dozens of locations linked to the missing man, a father of 3 and a well-loved figure in his community. Where we could not gain access, we used police powers and equipment to get in. A police helicopter and dogs combed the riverbank and fields. Detectives used technology and authorities developed for the investigation of crime to triangulate his phone, download his latest messages, analyse his finances and circulate his image to media and the police. When all else failed, a team of police divers was brought in. Tragically, the team was successful in recovering the gentleman's body from the river. I then spent an hour with the family answering all their questions after receiving the news, and I arranged for parking control during the funeral. In the 7 days of that exhaustive search, not many crimes were detected or reduced in Slough. You might even say, from a policing view, that it was a total waste of time and not our job at all. I know that I, my colleagues, and I dare to say the gentleman's family, would disagree. What other agency could possibly have carried out all of those functions? Who would have had the equipment, the resources, the experience and the necessary powers? Who else would have been there for the family in their hour of need? When will this government admit that policing is not and should not be just about crime?
I recognise that there are a number of roles that police officers play and a number of areas that police officers get involved in, and policing is obviously seen as the emergency service of last resort, as we know. But what I would say is that cutting crime, preventing crime and dealing with crime is about more than just police recorded statistics. Can I just give you some examples? I think it's important that we deal with antisocial behaviour effectively. We're making some changes on the law in relation to antisocial behaviour. All too often that is not seen as part of the process of cutting crime, but I believe it is part of the process of cutting crime. Dealing with, and there's various other areas. Domestic violence, sometimes people don't put in the category of cutting crime. I consider it is. Dealing with domestic violence is about cutting crime. And of course, a missing person can indeed be a sign of that potentially, not in this case that you cite, but potentially a crime has been committed. So yes, the police do get involved in doing other things. But there is a core strategic aim for the police, which is about cutting crime, and that is what I set at a very early stage. And I think the public would be absolutely clear that they want to see the police fighting crime.
But would you not concede that your cuts have made that kind of job and that kind of service more difficult, and in some cases led to that kind of service being put on the back burner?
Well, no, I don't accept that, John, because from what I see and what I hear from around the country, yes, there have been difficult decisions taken. But if you look at many forces, the way they're now configuring their response is to continue to give and recognition of the importance of those frontline response roles that Natalie has set out.
I'm sure we've got lots of questions to come. I'm going to go next to Simon Butterworth from West Yorkshire. Simon, could you put your point, Home Secretary, please?
Home Secretary, police officer numbers are rapidly falling and will continue to fall. What is the number of warranted police officers that the Home Secretary believes are necessary in England and Wales to protect the public, and where does that number come from?
I don't have a Home Secretary or a Home Office number for that, and it wouldn't be right for us to do that. What is right is that in each police force, decisions are taken by Chief Constables against the background of the budget and priorities that have been sent by the Police and Crime Commissioners to decide what the configuration of staff within and officers within that force should be. So it's not right for us to set that from the centre. That is appropriate to be taken at the force level. What, of course, I do from the centre is set the overall budget and the funding arrangements for each force.
So there's no target figure?
No.
All right, do you want to come back on that, Peter? Simon, I'm so sorry. Do you want to come back on that?
No, thank you.
OK, let's move on to Michael. It's actually Warren Hings who's speaking on behalf of Michael Brown. Now, to some extent, I think the Home Secretary's addressed this question, but you might want to elaborate on it anyway, Warren. Away you go.
Yes, thank you, Madam Home Secretary. You have gone some way to answering the question that I was going to ask. My question is around mental health. You've undertook to impact upon the amount of time that police officers spend dealing with mental health issues. And I thank you for what you said earlier. My concern is around at the NHS and their inability to deliver upon their obligations as outlined in law, statutory guidance and also clinical guidelines. We all accept that mental health issues eat up at least 20% of police demand. And I think it's fair to say that some of my colleagues on the front line are perceiving that the problem is getting far worse rather than better.
Yeah, I think that probably one thing they would like to know is, we hear what you say about the changes you're making, which are very welcome for all concerned. How long is it going to take?
Yeah, well, and the answer is I can't put an absolute deadline on some of these things. But as I've said, there is a timetable for some of the work that's going to be undertaken. The review of places of safety, of mental health provision, will be reporting to myself and Jeremy Hunt in the next couple of months. And the Health Secretary is very aware of this as an issue and we've been working well together on this. I think that's an important point to make. It is a priority. I mean, I've known, when I go around, what I found is when I go around the country and meet meet officers, invariably this issue is raised by officers. It's also raised by chiefs, a real concern about it. It's not going to change overnight, because some of these things will take time, particularly in relation to the ensuring the provision of other places of safety, of health provision in areas. But I think what you can take from what I've said today is that it's there. We recognise the priority to place on this, and action is being taken in a number of ways to help you.
Before we go, we'll open it up to anyone on the floor, and get ready behind the mics if you've got a question or a point to make to Home Secretary. One question from me. You heard the audience welcome your announcement about mandatory sentences for people who murder police officers. Why not mandatory sentences for anyone who commits murder?
Well, I think what we're doing is recognising that there is a particular, as I said in my speech, the murder of a police officer is a particularly appalling crime. As you know, obviously, there are other guidelines for murder more generally, but I think it's right that we say and we recognise that we ask police officers to do a particular task on our behalf, to take risks on our behalf, and that we should recognise, therefore, the particularly appalling nature of that crime.
But well-intentioned as it may be, is there not a danger that you'll be accused of putting a greater value on a police officer's life than that on a member of the rest of society?
Well, there are some who may say that. What I'm saying is that I think from society's point of view, we ask police officers to do a particular job for us. We are saying to police officers, you go out there and put yourself in the front line and take the risks. And as we've seen in the last year, how terrible those risks can be.
Enough of me. Let's have the question. Let's go to microphone 3. First of all, lady there. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your point is, please.
My name is Emma Owens. I'm from the Metropolitan Constables. Good morning. Home Secretary, you're on record for saying that there is a need for transparency around misconduct and corruption investigations within the police service. You're placing a great deal of faith into the hands of the IPCC. Can you tell us who will be their arbiter? Who will be able to judge them by their mistakes? And can employees of the IPCC expect to face a public misconduct hearing process and inclusion onto a national register of dismissed investigators if they fail in their duties to investigate police officers doing theirs?
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, you raised some interesting questions and interesting suggestions there, Emma. I mean, if I just explain the reason why I think it's important that we do put the extra resources into the IPCC to enable them to investigate serious and sensitive allegations against the police. It's important for the public that they feel that investigations are being done by a body that is independent, and it is one of the issues is the number of cases, obviously, that IPCC has been referring back to the police. So I think it's right that we take it away from the police and put that into the IPCC. But there is, I mean, it's also important that we work with the IPCC to ensure that they are independent, as they are at the moment, but that they continue to be perceived with that independence. And I understood the point that was made.
What's good for the goose should be good for the gander, shouldn't it?
I've been asked a question which I've not looked at previously, and as I said, we will be looking at how the IPCC will be undertaking these roles, and we all want to ensure that anybody who is conducting investigations is doing it properly, and that there is no, and indeed that every investigation is conducted without fear or favour.
But wouldn't it be fair, wouldn't it be more clear to everyone if they were subject to the same sort of scrutiny that as the officers being investigated, if indeed they made a mistake?
And John, you're asking me to make policy on the hoof, and I'm not intending to make policy on the hoof. What I'm saying is that I recognise the point that Emma has made. We are obviously going to be looking at how we transfer powers to the IPCC and how they will be conducting themselves in future.
I'm going to move on because we've got lots of questions, but thank you very much indeed. I have a gentleman on microphone 1. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your point is.
Good afternoon, Home Secretary. Jeff Mapps from Gwent. I'm sure my colleagues in England are eternally grateful for your intervention with us plugging the gaps in the health service in England. What have you done to fight the corner for Welsh police officers with your counterparts in Welsh Government?
Say the last bit again, sorry.
what have you done to fight the corner for Welsh police officers with your counterparts in Welsh Government?
The discussions that I've had so far have been with the Department of Health and with Jeremy Hunt as Secretary of State. So obviously that covers England. We will be talking to the Welsh Government about what we are doing under the Department of Health work with the Home Office. So we've not forgotten that health is devolved in Wales.
Do you want to come back on that?
It does sound as if you have forgotten, I must say, Minister. And I suppose a supplementary question is, on that basis, do you think that devolving the police service to the Welsh Government is no right for the time?
No, I mean, obviously, you'll be aware that in relation to the Silk Commission, there's a number of issues that have been looked at in terms of the relationship between Westminster Government and the Welsh Government. I don't think it's right that we should be devolving the police to responsibility for the police to Wales, but we will be talking with the Welsh Government about, and it's right, I think, that we're able to say what we are doing and the steps that we are taking under the Department of Health in relation to mental health, and set that as an example of what can be done to improve dealing with this issue in Wales.
Okay, thank you very much. Lady on the floor here, tell us who you are, where you're from.
Good afternoon, Home Secretary. I'm Paula Anderson, the JBB Secretary in Humberside. My question's one on the College of Policing. You mentioned the College of Policing and how important it is that the police play a pivotal role in how this is structured. Can you explain to conference why only one member of the Federation is on the governing board? And will you confirm when powers relating to promotion, recruitment and setting codes of practice will be transferred to the College to make it truly independent and free from political interference?
Okay, clear enough, Home Secretary?
Well, can I, on the second point, I mean, we are in the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Bill, which we published last week. We will be taking through some legislative backing to the structure of the College of Policing and looking at that structure and how we set that up in doing that. I mean, obviously, we've set it up. It has started to run. Obviously, I think Alex Marshall certainly has been here, and if he's not here today, but has been talking to you about the College of Policing. I think it is really an exciting time for policing, and I think it's going to do a very important job in future. And on the first question that you raised, I'd just like to perhaps take if I may, ask people, is the view of the Federation that you would wish to see another representative?
Well, you would, obviously.
Greatly. Actually, we've got members of ACPA there, we've got superintendents, we've even got 4 PCCs and only 1 Federation. Now, clearly, we represent the greatest amount of police officers across the country, so having 1 is, I would say, slightly inadequate.
Yeah, it does seem disproportionate on the face of it. You agree?
I will take that and think about that.
All right. Gentleman down here. Yes, sir.
I'm an inspector from Merseyside, a bit nervous, sorry. So.
Well, do your best. We're on your side.
Yeah. I've got a question at the end. It's just a quick one, really, for Madam Home Secretary. I work in the criminal justice part of the police, which is really not particularly sexy or dynamic. But obviously it has its part to play. And like everyone else, I've had cuts in my department, and I've been instrumental in doing some of those cuts. And my chief's here today, and I think I've been cut enough. But you got sort of semi-excited before in a good way with regards to the extra powers and the extra responsibilities come back to the police service for prosecution and so on and so forth. With reduced numbers that we've already got, what you've basically done is given us extra work. And my question really is, at what point do you think, Madam Home Secretary, that the Ministry of Justice stopped laughing when you took the work off and give it back to the police and then took extra money off us at the same time?
Let me be, well, First of all, the Ministry of Justice is having to do its bit in relation to the criminal justice system and improving the criminal justice system. And Damien Green is not just policing minister, but he's also criminal justice minister. And he spans both departments and is leading work across the board to make sure that we improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the whole criminal justice system. But on the point about what's happening on police-led prosecutions, it's not the case that we're simply saying, here you are, you take a lot more work on. What's going to happen is that this will actually reduce the resource that is, because it goes alongside proper court listings. So what will happen is that you'll be able to take these cases through very quickly in the court. They'll be listed, the aim is for them to be listed together so that time can be saved. And the whole point is, yes, you know, it is saying to the police, you can lead these prosecutions, but the way it's being done, and the pilot projects have shown this already, is that it does save police officer time.
Do you accept
so it saves resource.
Projects never fail. I think we sort of tend to appreciate that in the police service. My point is, this is something similar to when people kept saying, reduce paperwork, reduce paperwork. So we did. We just used one number for like an MG5, which is a multifunctional form now. It's about 11 pages long. And then we moved them all onto computers. So now we type them on the screen. It's still the same amount of paperwork. Okay. And our colleagues at the CPS, we then have to print them out at the end. It's given to them. The extra work is extra work. There's no glossing over it. It's extra work with less. We're doing less with less.
But there are things that you won't be doing.
More with less.
Yes, there are things that you won't be doing now in terms of these prosecutions. So you won't be preparing. There are issues about the files, the requirements on files that have been produced for the CPS, but you won't be having to hand over these cases to the CPS. There will be some smoother, some quicker ways in which these cases can be dealt with, and you know, some of the other changes, like the charging by post that I've referred to. I mean, these are changes that save officer time. Rather than increasing the amount of time that is having to be spent on particular areas of work.
Could I just ask one question that Steve asked and see what your reaction to it is? He talked about compulsory severance and asked you to take it off the table. Is that going to be possible at some stage? Are you sympathetic to that point of view?
Well, I recognise the concern that's been raised about the compulsory severance. Obviously, it was in Windsor. It went through the PMB and the PAT. The PAT have referred it back to the PMB. It's now within that negotiating body, and I think it's right to leave it there for those discussions and negotiations to take place and go through the system.
Do you see their point? That, you know, they can't go on strike, but they can be sacked. It does seem unfair from their point of view.
There are other parts of the public service where it's possible not to go on. People don't go on strike, but also can be made redundant.
All right, one last shot. Do you not recognise that by compulsory severance you will be throwing away years of valuable service?
No, what I recognise is that there is a strength of concern about this particular issue, and that has been made clear to me not just by the response to the reference Steve made today, but the leadership of the Federation has made that clear to me on a number of occasions. But I think it's in the negotiating body. Let's see how those negotiations take place, and the Fed will obviously be playing their part in that.
I've tried. Thank you. Gentleman on microphone 3. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Home Secretary. Kevin Walsh, Met Police. My question is twofold, based on trust and confidence. Recent times have brought savage cuts in police budgets, which have compromised how officers go about their day-to-day jobs. Morale's in tatters. This government has implemented measures through ACPO that are highly unpopular. How do you propose to, one, rebuild trust so officers can again enjoy confidence in their leaders and their government? And number two, fairness. Only new MPs will go onto the new pension scheme proposed by your government. Those on the existing scheme will face no new conditions. Why could this not be reflected across our pensions?
Okay. The question of trust, first of all, Home Secretary, or lack of it.
Yes, well, can I just, in relation to the MPs' pensions, the IPSA, the independent body that was set up because of people's concerns about MPs voting on their own pay and conditions, is doing a review of pay and pensions for MPs, which I believe will be reporting later this year. So it's not the case that nothing is necessarily going to change. That review will come forward later this year. On the issue of rebuilding trust, I would hope that officers would see that the measures that the government are taking in some of the issues like the police-led prosecutions, like the charging, like the individual professional discretion, is precisely about trusting officers. It is about showing that we believe that you are the best people to make these decisions, and the College of Policing is about enhancing professionalism, about making British policing even better still, as I said at the end of my speech. So I can only show you by the measures that I am taking to enhance policing, by working with you to ensure that that future of policing is the one that people feel is going to deliver what is absolutely right for members of the public in the job that the police are doing.
Do you accept that as a way forward that might actually help you and your colleagues have more faith, have more trust in this government?
My main concern is on the pensions, in that if the pot is empty, there should be consistency across the board, and what's good for one is good for all when it comes to cuts within pensions.
Okay, well, do you want to have a quick response to that, Humsek?
We have the pensions agreement now. Across the public sector, pensions have been changed. There was an issue about the sustainability of the previous arrangements. I have managed to get agreement to some good transitional arrangements for officers who are in existing schemes. But there had to, across the board of the public sector, there have been changes in pensions, and policing has taken its share of that.
I'm going to have to pause you because you can see a lot of other people have come in. Microphone 2, tell us who you are again and where you're from, sir. Yes, you, sir. Microphone 2, yeah, you. You, microphone 2.
Sorry.
Yes,
Okay,
you, sir.
Richard Eccles, North Wales. Home Secretary, it's quite a straightforward question. You'll be aware of the letter dated the 14th of March 2013 from Brandon Lewis MP regarding advice in relation to taxpayers' funding of trade unions. That letter included clear recommendations around reducing financial support and facility time for trade union activity in the workplace. With that letter as a backdrop, can you share with this conference your vision for the future operating model of the Police Federation of England and Wales? And can you also tell us how you intend to ensure that vision is progressed? Will it be via submissions to the independent review or by other means?
Okay, there's an independent review going on, as you know, of the Federation, your vision of it and how you'll contribute to it.
And my answer to the question is a very simple one. Actually, I don't think it is for me as Home Secretary to take a view on the future of the Police Federation. I don't think it's for me to put into that independent review. I think it is for the Police Federation itself to be able to decide what its future should be. That review, of course, will take a number of evidence from a number of organisations and people. But I don't envision a situation where I, as Home Secretary, say I want the Federation to be this and act in this particular way. What I want to do is to be able to work with the Federation, whatever the Federation decides as a result of that review, its structure and its future vision should be.
Microphone 4 tells you also, make your point.
Graham Riley, Secretary, Gloucestershire JBB, and I stand on my own behalf. Home Secretary, on many occasions you have stated that Mr Windsor's recommendations, when implemented, would reward officers for the skills and experience they acquire. All constables can get to the top of the pay scale without taking on any additional skills or responsibility. So what incentive is there for officers to progress and take on more responsibility now that special priority payments and competency-related threshold payments have been abolished or are being phased out?
Okay, I think we'll probably touch on this afternoon as well, but let's have your response to that.
Yes, and of course, the skills element of the Windsor proposals has not yet been finalised. It was referred back. As you know, Tom Windsor proposed that there should be an interim skills payment. The PAT came out against that, said that should not be adopted. I accepted the recommendations of the PAT, and the College of Policing is now working on putting a scheme together which would be, which is acceptable for everybody that can recognise those skills. So those payments will be coming in due course. But there has been, I recognise there's not been that interim payment, but that was the recommendation of the PAT, that there should not be that interim payment.
Quick response, sir.
Yeah, my understanding was that interim payment was an interim payment, and then once that had gone, all there would be the ability to get the specialist threshold payment, and that is simply being at the top of the pay scale, which we can all get to without taking on any additional responsibility.
The point of the proposals that Tom Windsor put forward were that there were certain tasks that should be recognised as requiring specialist skills, and that there would be a payment attached to those particular tasks and those particular skills. There was a that interim arrangement that he proposed obviously had, I think it was either 3 or 4 categories in which those payments would be made. The PAT proposal was that the reason that should not go forward was because that had not been perhaps subject to the fullest of analysis in terms of what that should be, and hence the College of Policing is the body that is now taking that on.
Just one more from me, which has been around and in the papers in the last couple of days, and that's the crime figures. You say that they're down by 10%, and you've explained the reasons for arriving at that conclusion. The Federation have taken a slightly different view. They say that you think these figures are misleading. I think that they're misleading because people simply aren't reporting crimes, or they can't find a police station open to report a crime at because your government has shut some of them. And they also think that, there's been a fudging of the figures, that, for example, when a mobile gets stolen, for example, it goes down as missing. One series of crimes often goes down as one crime. And whistleblowers, who previously leaked this kind of information to the likes of me, are afraid to do so now because of the ramifications of the Leveson inquiry. I'm just wondering what your response to all of that is.
Well, my first response is this, which is that it is not the case that police recorded crime figures are going down and no other crime figures are going down and other crime figures are going up. What we see is both the police recorded crime figures and the crime survey for England and Wales, which is not based on recorded crime or reported crime, it's based on asking people whether they have been subject to crime. Those figures are going down as well, and in fact the crime survey figures are at their lowest recorded level.
But in a sense, if people aren't reporting crime, they wouldn't they? If people aren't reporting crimes, they're not recording, there's no crime to record. There's no point in reporting this crime because there aren't enough coppers to go and investigate, so why bother?
But John, there are 2 sets of figures. One is based on whether or not people are reporting and crime and it is being recorded, and the other is based on surveying people and asking people about their experience of crime, and that is showing that the crime figures are falling, as are the police recorded crime figures. But the other thing I would say is I do feel a little disappointed because in the Federation's response, because as I said in my speech, I think the fact that crime figures are falling are down to the good work of officers.
You're concerned about people being scared of talking to the press because of the ramifications of the Leveson inquiry?
Well, obviously, what has come out of the Leveson inquiry is a requirement, and this has come through the guidance that was issued by ACPO, in fact, during the Leveson inquiry, they looked at this particular issue, is some new guidance and frameworks for how officers should speak to the media. But that was done for very good reasons, if you just look at some of the things that have come out in the Leveson inquiry.
But they shouldn't be covering up malpractice, should they? I mean, if that's happening.
But if there is malpractice, then people should be able to report that malpractice actually through the system.
And should feel free to do so.
Should feel able to do so.
OK, thank you very much. Where should I go now? Let's go gentleman down here who's been waiting a long time. Microphone 4 on the bottom. Yes, sir.
Home Secretary, I'm John Hassell, the Chairman of the Lincolnshire Joint Branch Board. Your government uses phrases such as, "we're all in it together." That rings hollow now. Our pension contributions have increased, MPs' pension contributions have not. Your government says that it will reward strivers. The policemen and women of England and Wales work supremely hard. You acknowledge that. And yet, with pay freezes, with incremental freezes, with increases in inflation, people I represent are now taking home less pay than they used to. You say that you want to trust us. Were you aware that vast swathes of the police force don't trust you and your government?
OK, we've been here before, but...
On the point you make about pensions, as I said in response to an earlier question, Parliament set up an independent body to look at the issue, to manage the issue of MPs' pay and conditions, and that is looking at the question of pay and pensions at the moment, and will be reporting, I think, later this year. On the issue of the impact of the cuts and the fact that we've had to make cuts in police budgets, I'm afraid my answer isn't going to be any different from the one that I have given in the past in relation to this. Yes, I recognise the difficulties that this has led to for some. I recognise that this is difficult across the board. But we have had to make these tough decisions about public sector spending, and it's right that the Home Office, and within that policing, takes a share of that.
But they feel picked on. They feel it's disproportionate. You know, you've been there before.
Yes, I know, and I recognise that people have said in the past that there is such an extent of reform taking place that is why it's led to that feeling. But I think that the reform that, yes, we have, I mean, we are obviously paying conditions is part of that, but all the other reforms we're doing. But it is about making British policing even better still. The College of Policing, I believe, is an important institution because it is going to be about the professionalism of policing, professionalism of police, and it's about the police as a whole being able to be part of that and making those decisions. But there are other things we're doing that are going to improve our ability in relation to policing. The creation of the National Crime Agency to put a greater focus on serious and organised crime, border crime, child exploitation and economic crime, for example. So there is a lot of reform that has taken place, and I recognise there's a lot of reform, but I believe that and the financial circumstances are difficult and will remain difficult for some years, but I believe that what we're doing will actually lead to better policing in the future.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in one more. Thank you for your contribution. I'm going to squeeze in one more, then I'm afraid we have to end it. Yes, sir.
Sergeant Eddie Marsden from Humberside. Home Secretary, 2 years ago I stood up and asked you a question about what you thought of the ridiculous licensing laws that we have in this country and the effect that it has on resources of now policing the nighttime economy until the early hours are indeed dawn. Can you give me an update? Because it seems that my colleagues back in Humberside are still doing that and there doesn't seem to be any changes at all.
Did you get an indication from the Home Secretary? I can't remember, but did you get an indication from the Home Secretary last time that it was going to change? And it hasn't, is that what you're saying?
If I remember rightly, Home Secretary, you said that you agreed with the ridiculous, the fact that they were ridiculous and you were going to take it away and look at it.
Okay, Home Secretary?
Yes, I mean, we have made some changes in licensing which went through in the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act. And it's taken time for some of those to actually come into force in relation to a number of things. The late night levy, which enables local authorities actually to levy money on licensed premises so that can be used to pay for policing that is required. And there are some greater powers for local authorities in licensing terms to be restricting some of the hours that licensed premises are open. We've also made it enhance the ability of police and others like residents to be able to put in their views and in relation to premises when licensing applications are up for consideration. We have published an alcohol strategy, and we're looking at we had a consultation on the issue particularly of pricing in relation to alcohol. We're considering the outcome of that, and we're looking at a variety of examples across the country. I mean, in Durham, for example, the best bar none work that was done with licensed premises and the local authority and police together resulted in better circumstances, fewer problems in the city centre, but also actually increased footfall in terms of the economy because more people felt it was okay to go into the city centre because they weren't seeing the number of problems in the city centre.
What would be a quick fix for you?
Take the licensing laws back to finishing at 2 and 3 in the morning.
So 11 o'clock closing, yeah? All right, an option?
There are greater powers for local authorities in relation to those in terms of I'm trying to remember the phrase, but it's the early morning
Well,
orders.
we'll take your word for it, but there are powers there. Yeah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to end it there because the Home Secretary has to get back to him. I'm sure you'd like to show your appreciation for her time and indeed, thank you very much indeed for all your questions. Thank you very much.